Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Mary Lynn Manns. We talked about what a difference 10 minutes can make, about not beating ourselves up for not achieving a daily goal, and how a better life beats more money. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello Mary Lynn Manns. I think that's how I should pronounce the name, right?
Man's, yeah, it's
And
okay. I answer to a lot of different things.
well, yeah, that's is. But I'd always try to ask the people these days to ask it on camera because it's much nicer if we pronounce it in the right way. And so welcome here. And with here, I also want to show a little bit on where we are. I'm in Ghent in Europe, and I think let's move to your place, and that goes all the way to the United States. And we're
Wow.
coming to Asheville, if I'm correct.
Yes, Asheville, North Carolina. Everybody listening to this is invited to come to Asheville, North Carolina in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's beautiful here, just beautiful.
Let's bring you on screen back again. So for the few people that don't know you, could you? Oh no, and where we are, we just did it in the pre-talk as well. On my side, it's 10 before 8 in the evening on a Thursday evening. What's the time on your side?
It's 10 before 2 in the East Coast
2.
of North Carolina.
So that's a big of miles and also a lot of time zones away.
And you know
So
what?
I think
I just said East Coast of North Carolina, meant the East Coast of the United States. We're actually in Western North Carolina in the mountains. So
yeah,
there it is.
exactly. That's but yeah, it's good that you rectify that because sometimes people can think, okay, depending on how good they know your country or the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, Mary Lynn, for the few people that don't know you, could you say give yourself a little introduction before we jump into the questions?
I guess, well, hi everyone. Again, my name is Mary Lynn Manns, and I guess I'm most known for being the co-author of Fearless Change and More Fearless Change. And I co-authored both of those books with Linda Rising. It's a project we started in 1999, somewhere in there, and we have continued till today. And I was a professor when we were working on that. I was a professor of computer science and then management information systems at the University of North Carolina at Asheville. And I taught topics on change and information systems, and I taught programming languages. And I just say all this because after a while, you realize all you've done when you get to be my age. So I won't bore you with all that. But I thoroughly enjoyed my years working with 19 and 20-year-olds, and they're delightful people to work with, and I miss them very much. But after 38 years, I left academia, and I'm now working just with Fearless Change, and there's where I am now. But I love the topic of change. So, and actually I led a dance at a commencement. I was a commencement speaker. And I said, look, you all expect to just change the world by just sitting there? No, let's get up and do something different. Today's the day. And so everybody got up and I led a Zumba dancing. So trying to get people in the mindset of change. So I'll be glad to talk more about anything today, but especially change. Thanks.
Well, and I think the 19, 20-year-olds is really like their world is changing completely in many different ways. And so I can definitely see how much fun that can be. I have a 20-year-old up in his room programming these days. So yeah, and I see a lot of change. So a couple of years ago, he had to do a similar kind of project that he's doing now. And yeah, I just watched today a little bit of his work, and it's amazing how much he already learned in just a couple of years doing. Yeah, so But it's indeed a completely different age, and people who are, well, many of them, I would say, into looking at the world that is changing around them, and they're
Mhm.
moving into the big world in a way. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah.
And so you were, how would I say it? You were allowed to be a witness or even to be a part of this journey for a lot of years. So that sounds like a very interesting
Mhm.
experience as a human.
You mean, are you talking about the journey of working on fearless change?
I
Or
was
what?
talking now for working with the students. When you
Oh,
work
working
with
with
the
students. Oh,
students.
yeah. Yes. I often said to people, I have the best job in the world, just working with young minds and being in a university where there is always something different going on every day and every week and every month. And I just think it's such a privilege to work with students and to work on a university where you can let your mind run free. And it should always be a safe place where people can express their thoughts and even say things that often cause the professor to roll their eyes, although we don't do it in front of them. And wow, do they really believe that? But it just makes me realize how beautiful the process of learning is, because now later, as I keep in touch with my students who are on Facebook or LinkedIn, I see them, they've been married, they have children, they have their jobs, and it's just so beautiful to see who they've become from that 19-year-old who was once in the classroom. Even to watch them from 19 till 22, or even the older students that come for the 4 years, 5 years they're there, to see how much they change over the years.
Mm.
So it is quite a privilege. It was the best job in the world, in my opinion, and I miss it a lot. And so all you university professors out there, or people who are thinking about going into that particular field, I'm telling you, it's the best.
It's the best.
Yeah.
And still you change because also at some point, you make changes yourself, I would say.
Mhm.
Um, okay, let's jump into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
What people don't know about me and has influenced me. I would say what people don't know about me is how much my people in my world mean to me. I mean, that may sound like I'm being repetitious, but I think what influences me most is just watching people and listening to my friends and listening to my family. And I think that has the biggest influence on me, more so than all the degrees that I've earned or the time I've spent in the classroom. It's just the one on one with people, and what a difference 10 minutes with someone can make, or
Mm,
just taking time to reach out to someone. I have a motto that every day I take a few minutes to send a text, make a phone call, to reach out to someone that may need it, or just that I want to see what they're up to. And it's just this little thing I do every day, and it that often has the biggest effect on my day, and in turn, as the question you asked, on me and my life. So um, I'd say that's really what I like most, and how I learn the most from other people in these
And
little conversations.
and it's kind well, I was trying to think, can I ask for an example? But of course, this is really about personal things, so I'm not sure if that's possible to give an example because I have the feeling it's something that you might not always want to share.
Yeah, so this morning I was at the gym, and I sometimes think while I'm at the gym, and I was thinking, okay, who can I reach out to today? And then I remembered that a friend of mine told me that her mother was having surgery today. Now I don't
Mm,
know her mother well, and I didn't get the time of the surgery, but I knew it was today. And so I thought, okay, when I get back from the gym, I am just going to send this friend of mine a text and ask about her mother and ask how she's doing. And so sometimes I have that specific thing. Sometimes I just think about who I haven't heard from in a while or who I haven't talked to in a while, which is easy in this busy world to have those people. And I just say, checking in. And my saying is always, you popped into my mind. And sometimes people come
Mm.
back and say, did that hurt? So sometimes it's just somebody that pops into your mind for silly reasons. And you just say, you popped into my mind. How are you doing? So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I like that example, and sometimes it's yeah, these little things. I once heard, I don't know if it's research or it's just a thing, but if people really are having a bad time, that it takes like I think less than 10 minutes having a conversation just with a friend that takes the time to listen to already make them feel a lot better. But yeah, usually, well, we don't always know when they're feeling bad, so
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a good tip to ask people, like, if you're not really feeling okay, to say, oh, do you have 10 minutes for me, and just, and because that could be a kind of sign, like, okay, I really need your help. And yeah, and I think these kind of things, just small messages, are really making people yeah, making us feel much better, and much more connected, even. And like you say, if you do that in a text message or something like that, you can have it a long distance way also, to like, oh, you popped into my
Mhm.
mind. So that is a nice way to get in touch, or to stay in touch with friends, I would say.
Yeah, and people give a lot of they say, "Oh, text messaging, that isn't personal." But even if you just send a text message just to say that particular thing, it's unexpected, right? It's unexpected. People may not have expected to receive that. And so it makes them feel good. And it can say, "Oh, you know what? We should set up a lunch or we should set up a time to talk." But most of the time it's they're just responding to my text and we're moving
Mhm.
on. So it takes little time on my part, little time on their part, and but I don't know why it means a lot to me. And me, I feel like I'm doing it for other people, but it just means a lot to me to keep my day in check. To make my
And
day
if
feel
you, even if you do it just once a day,
once a
that's already 360 people a year that
yeah,
you
yeah,
connect with. And of course, it's
yeah,
sometimes the same people, I guess, but
yeah.
still, it keeps you connected with a lot.
Mhm,
I really like that. That's something I will yeah, try to remember, and maybe also try to
mhm.
get into that kind of habits.
Oh, good.
So it's a
Text me
nice.
sometime. You can
Well,
text me sometime.
well, yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
it's a good idea to have these kind of things, and I noticed that I do that from time to time with ex-colleagues. I just say, okay, could we? I sometimes call it, or sometimes have, if I'm working in the same city as they are working, I might have on an unregular basis what I call a dinner with the not so strangers, to just have a some kind of lunch or dinner in the middle
Uh-huh.
of our working day, depending. It's not that easy, because of course we sometimes, both or many of us, are busy, um but just, yeah, checking in with each other in multiple kind of ways, I think it's how we keep connected, and how we yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
tell people, like, I care about you, I cared before about you. If I no longer work with you, I might still care about you. So
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly.
that's again one small little thing, how we can change the world. I really
Right.
like that.
One small little thing. And you said you're gonna try to remember. After a while, it just gets to be such a habit. So, like I said, I was at the gym this morning and it was like, okay, who am I contacting today? It just gets to be anything you do, it get after a while, it's at first it's a hard, oh, I gotta remember to do that. And then it just becomes a habit.
Yeah,
So
I noticed that I'm pretty good at creating new habits. The only
mhm.
thing is that if I have too many of them, I have to be careful about not having too many small habits, because otherwise it might become feel a burden. Like, oh, I need to do
Really.
5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of that. Like, okay, but still, yeah, it's small little habits that are making our days. So I think that is
I think
nice.
that's actually a personal change issue because when I talk about personal change in workshops
Mhm.
and things like that, I can see people get a little stressed about, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to be this, I've got to become this, I've got to start this goal, and all these kind of things. And it's about just little things of continuous improvement.
Mhm.
So the idea that, okay, I'm going to add this because it sounded good to what Mary Lynn said is not really, if it's not you, it's not you. Or if it's not the person who's listening to this, let it go. It works for me. So there's other ways to continuously improve. It doesn't have to be that we have to strive for this perfection. Now, I'm not saying anything
Mhm.
that we don't already know, but here it is. Here's your permission to not have 1,000 good habits in a day. Here's your permission to just think about small little things that can allow you to continuously improve, with the emphasis on small.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like that because it reminds me of a tip that I gave a long time ago to, but I keep giving it to people when they want to read more. Like people always say, yeah, but reading I don't have time, and it's like, yeah, you can also try to have the habit of reading one page a day, and most people have the time to read one page a day. Don't
Mhm.
make it 10, whatever. Make it start small. Have the habit of reading one page a day and try to do it every day. Feel it for a month if that works, and then you get into that habit, and maybe you can gradually move more. And if you want to read more on a day, that's fine, but try to get the habit of just one page a day, and that
Mhm.
really is helping. And one page a day is one or two books a year, so depending on how big the books are that you select, and then you're getting into that new habit. And that's, yeah, that I like that. It shouldn't always be the big ones, and I think actually the small changes have the biggest impacts if you can do that, if you can create
Mhm.
habits.
Mhm.
And
And
it's a
not
different kind of habit than just texting. But yeah, go ahead, you wanted to add something.
sorry. Well, and not beat yourself up when you have a 5 days in a row where you don't read that one page, right? Something happens
Hmm.
and you get some whatever, and you don't become judgmental, because that can cause you to suddenly stop. So you just say, okay, the last 5 days I didn't read that one page. Huh. Okay, I'll move on from here.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that.
I have this about, well, I have a step walker. I used to, I most of the time I work on a walking desk, so I do a lot of steps in the day. And I remember a couple of years ago that I was really ill and I was in bed all day. And then by the end of the evening, I felt bad, like, oh, I only did like 500 steps. And I was like, no, Eve, you were ill, you were in bed. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's normal when you're ill that you don't move at all, and that's fine. But really, yeah, I was almost beating myself up, and until I realized, come on, you were ill. It's totally fine. It's and you will probably get back. And indeed, the moment I was cured, when I was no longer ill, yeah, it was very easy to step up again. And but it was so I really like what you say, because it's so easy that we beat ourselves up
Uh-huh.
for things, for small things that shouldn't matter at that kind of level.
And you know what
It's
I heard in that story? I heard, wait, you weren't feeling well and you still made 500 steps? That's what I heard in that story. Like, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
indeed. But yeah, for me, it's like, yeah, that's probably going from the bed to the bathroom or to the toilet, and that's about it. But still, like you say, I moved, but compare it to yeah, a few thousand steps or 10,000 or twenty
Yeah.
thousand steps a day. That's not much. But like you say, for an ill day, it's already, it's better than nothing. And even there, if I would have been completely zero, that's fine as well. So yeah.
Well, we wrote about that in Fearless Change, about this pattern called small successes. And,
Hmm.
we wrote Fearless Change by interviewing leaders of change and asking for their best strategies, the strategies they used. And we kept hearing this over and over again, that it's really important to celebrate even your smallest accomplishments. And I had to
Mm.
be convinced of that before we put it in the book, even though we heard it over and over again in our interviews. But one person finally said to us, look, it keeps you looking forward instead of looking in, wait, no, wait. It keeps you looking at what you've accomplished rather than what you have to do. There's so many things you still have to do, and that can overwhelm you. So instead, by taking time to celebrate your small successes, it keeps you motivated because you're looking at all you've done or even the little
Mm.
things you've done. And so, again, it's a motivator to just celebrate where you are, even if it's just a small movement. And then it keeps you
Yeah.
from looking at all you have to still do. I
Yeah,
love
and I
that.
think, yeah, I think our brains are wired that way. All the dopamine shots that we get when we achieve something. This is why,
Uh-huh.
and I think a lot of people with me, when I did something and I didn't write it on my to-do list, I will still write it on so I can scrap it off. Like, hey, I did something. It
Me too.
feels somehow better when
Me too.
I can scrap it off, even if I didn't think about doing it before. And yeah, it's that extra accomplishment and extra celebration. Yes, I've done this.
Look at
And
my
then,
to-do list. Look at this. I was so excited because I scratched a bunch of stuff off of it this
wow,
morning.
exactly.
You see
But
all the
that's it.
stuff?
That's the nice thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's lovely stories. I think let's move to that next question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what could have become of you?
Well, I always, when I was younger, I loved photography, and I had a dark room where I actually put my fingers in the chemicals. Who knows what that's going to do to me now? But that was what we did back then. We put our fingers in the chemicals without gloves.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I had a dark room in my house, and I love taking pictures of people. So I was and people to this day still have those pictures framed, and I have them signed. But then I got into banking, and I thoroughly enjoyed banking as a career in my early years, and that was the days where. It was really hard for women. Let me just put it this way, because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing men. I love men; they're wonderful. But it was the days when men advanced and women didn't, and I could tell you some horror stories. But that's in the past. That's in the past. So I watched this happen in the two banks that I worked for, and I said, I'm going nowhere. And so I went back to school, and that's how I became a professor, got my master's and my PhD. But I probably would have stayed in banking had things been different.
Mm.
And that probably wouldn't have made me as happy. Well, no, I'm going to say with certainty that wouldn't have made me as happy. No offense to all you bankers and financial people out there. Because I'm thinking, well, I might have become a financial advisor because that's what a financial advisor is a teacher. And I love playing
Mm.
with dollars and cents and money and making the columns line up. So that's probably where I would have gone had I not gone back to school in computer science and information systems. So yeah, it's always interesting because when I used to advise young students who are 17, 18 years old, and their parents might be sitting there going, you need to make a decision. And I think of my journey, and I started in undergrad as a home economics major because I loved to cook and sew and still do. And look what I became. I eventually got a
Mm.
PhD in what was called computer technology. So, no, you don't need to make a decision as a 17 or 18-year-old. All of us who get into our 50s and 60s can talk about the interesting way our lives evolved. And that's a little bit about mine.
I really like that you share it. And it's actually when my now 21-year-old started at university some years ago, he had a really hard time making a decision. He really literally decided, like, I think a couple of weeks before he had to, although we kind of had an idea where he wanted to go. But still, he couldn't decide. And in one of the conversations, he said, like, yeah, but you have to understand this is the most important decision I have to take, and my whole next life depends on this. I'm like, yeah, I understand it's an important decision, but there will be so much changes, and so yeah, it was. it was interesting because we didn't want to push him like in one direction or the other, but at the same time, like, yeah, if in 2 weeks the year starts, either you do something, or okay, maybe we need to you need to take a year break. That was also a
Mhm.
possibility, but let's
Uh-huh.
not run out of time, and let's see. And yeah, it was hard for him making a change, and that was interesting to look at these kind of conversations with yeah. And in the end, I think there was a lot of pressure from yeah, from his teachers at high school, who were basically, yeah, saying, I don't think you can do this. Where, yeah, that's
Mhm.
that's not the kind of advice I think teachers should give. If people or students are interested in a certain direction, for me it's like, well, why don't you try? Even if it doesn't work, at least you know that it doesn't work. And it turns
Mhm.
out now, 4 years later, that he's really happy, and that he's, yeah, okay, it's not easy. He might do a couple of years extra, but that's fine. It's like he loves it. He's not bad at it. There's,
Uh-huh.
of course, sometimes what I would call some lessons, or some of the topics that are harder. Okay, that's I think in everything. I much rather prefer that he's taking on a challenge that is harder than something that he doesn't like, that is very easy to do. That's yeah.
Wow, I wish all parents could be like that. That's because there are those parents that think that that decision that they make as a freshman in college, whatever age they're at a freshman in college, that's the decision that's going to guide the rest of their lives. And that's so not true. They'll get in and they'll take these other classes and get interested in different things. And then as they graduate, they'll meet different people, and they will look, opportunities will pop up. And look what happened to me. It was a negative thing
Mm.
that happened to me. I wasn't able to move forward. And so I went back to school. So you
So you
just never
moved
know.
sideways and then move forward again. So yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
and then I thought I would be, working at the university, I was at for more than 39 years, but then, Fearless Change just became, there were so many opportunities that I wanted to continue with that, and, so you just never know, you never know. I know with my daughter, it was funny, she started in pre-med. I thought, "Okay, pre-med," and then she told me, these afternoon labs are interfering with my softball schedule. And
Mm,
I was very glad she was a softball person because that was a great for her. But I thought, if she really loved pre-med, she wouldn't be saying that.
mm,
So then she's looking for other possibilities. And one day she said to me, my roommate's driving me crazy. And when she's in here, she has so much, she creates so much noise. So when she's around, I just do my math homework. I go, wait a minute, when there's lots of noise around, you do your math homework. So that tells me you must be good at math. And then we continued that conversation, majored in math, master's in statistics. And that was not what she planned at a 17-year
mm.
old. I tell that story and your story for all the parents who might be listening to this and thinking, okay, I need to just
Mhm.
let my kids be and do, with our guidance.
Yeah, I really, well, for me, I think this is one of the reasons why that question is in this series, because it's, and yes, there are a couple of people, and now interviewed, what, 130 people or something like that. And it's like,
Mhm.
there's a couple of people who had something, this is the path and I'm still on it. But most people, it's like in all kind of directions.
Mhm.
And sometimes they stop doing, and then, yeah, even this question, when I asked what you could be doing, there were people who are saying, like, actually, I could also start doing that again in a couple of years. And then, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's also one of it used to be a joke, but I'm at the same time serious. Like, I have no idea what I will do with the rest of my life. It's like, okay, even at 50, 52, there might still be completely new challenges coming up, and I might change completely direction. And yeah, that is fine. There are some people that have been, like my partner has been working in the same company, in the same work group for whole our life, and she's really happy with that. And there's other people who've been moving a lot around, so that's a different lifestyle, or yeah, I don't know, life experiences, I would say, and that's all
Yeah.
as valuable as each other.
Yeah. But she's probably been doing different things within the company. That's what's kept her intrigued, right?
Well, she's working as how do you call it? So she's helping people who have autism. So it's a living group with people who have
Oh.
autism, and so it's been the same living group. It's the same kind of work, but of course the people change because these
Mhm.
people are only, I don't know the exact years officially. I think it's 16 to 22 or something like that. But there have been, yeah, that it's a hard time in Belgium to get them to a new place. So there are. Yeah, young adults, I would say, that are staying there way longer, but still, after some time, they move on. There is definitely different colleagues. It's been in a different building, so indeed, there has been change over
Mhm.
the years. So it's definitely not the exact same thing that existed like 20 years ago. That is indeed different.
And it's important work. So she's recognizing it's important work. So whatever work you're doing, you want to know that it's important, right? I once had a job that I was offered more money to do what I was doing, and I realized I did it for a while, and I realized this was while I was still working at the university. I left to try this other job and then came back to the university because I didn't realize I didn't feel that I was contributing to the world in the
Mm,
same way I was doing at the university. Now that was just my opinion. There were people there that worked there that loved it and felt they were making big contributions. But for me, it was okay. How do I best make contributions to the world? So and if you can still pay your bills and make less money, maybe in another position where you really feel like you're contributing, then I say go for it, because then you love getting up in the morning, and go, and most of the time you love your job. So,
Yeah, I think if people loved, or if I look at the way what I've been doing, I've always loved what I've been doing, and I don't have the feeling like thank God it's Friday or I don't want to go to work on Monday. I just love what I do, and
mhm,
there might be moments that I feel that it's time for me to move on, but I
mhm,
don't want to keep dragging on in a place where I don't feel valued anymore, or that I think I can do something else more valuable. So then I
mhm,
might move on, and that is, I think, so much more important than the money. Of course, we all want to get paid what is worth for what we're doing, but it's not, for me, not the main driver on doing
mhm.
what I'm doing. I think that is, and I think that's for many of us.
Yep.
um, well, if we already are in the luxury that we
That's
have
right.
a
Yeah.
job, that we have a decent amount of money, because
Mhm.
if that's not at that level, then there are a whole different kind of things that are playing a role.
Well, I don't remember the person who actually studied this, but it turns out that when people feel that they have their needs met and their baseline, they get their baseline salary and their baseline income, then any money added on to that doesn't necessarily make them happier. What
Mm,
makes them happier is the job that they're doing. So, people that have a baseline that they believe they can live on and pay their bills on, uh, can need to think about whether that adding more money is more important than adding a situation that they would enjoy more.
mm.
And again, I don't remember the researcher who studied that, but it's a pretty cool study. It's a very cool study, that's been replicated. So
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know the exact same research, but I've heard similar kind of stories. So yeah,
yeah,
and
probably
I
because it's
definitely
replicated.
recognize that.
Uh-huh.
That's yeah, it's once you're in that situation, you recognize it,
Mhm.
and yeah, what I've seen it, and of course, especially in IT, I think where if people are in IT, most of the time we're really decent paid,
Mhm.
and especially compared to a lot of other sectors. And yeah, I understand when sometimes people want a lot more, but is that really bringing you much more joy?
Joy.
Depending on the time what you're spending, depending on what
Yeah.
you're doing. Yeah, it's yeah, that's the thing.
Mhm.
Um, and so that is a very, yeah, recognizable story, I would say.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to move to that
Mhm.
next question. What do you consider your biggest challenge, and or at least the biggest challenge you want to share openly on the internet, of course, and
Mhm.
why is that a good thing for you?
Yeah, well, my biggest challenge is that I love to write and I don't. make enough time for it. And I use the word make because you could argue that everybody will make time for things that they really want to do. And so I'm very puzzled why specifically, I'm writing a third book. And whoops, I lost you there for a second. Are you there?
I'm still here. I'm still
Okay.
here.
Okay. I'm writing a third book, and that's taken a lot of time. I have a co-author, and so it's a lot of time sitting in front of a computer and writing. But what I really love to write are blogs. These short
Mm,
pieces where you don't have to write a bunch of citations, and you leave your reader with a message. And so my biggest challenge right now is trying to write in the fun ways in blogs when I have these, because I have so much material that comes out of Fearless Change where I could write blogs, and I just haven't been taking the time to do it. So it was interesting in the beginning of our conversation when you said about reading a page every day. What if I sat down and wrote for 5 minutes every day? And then I began to think, well, that's going to be hard because I'm such a perfectionist. I'm going to keep
mm,
on wanting to write. But maybe that's a good thing. So that's something I'm struggling with right now, is getting more blogs written. I have on our Fearless Change website blogs that I'm proud of and want to write more. And so that's currently what I'm struggling with right now. And
mhm.
I think it's because I spend way too much time in front of the computer and not enough time in what I want to do in front of the computer, and that is write blogs. There always seems to
Mm,
be an emergency email, and I'm on a bunch of different boards, and I feel
yeah,
that people's needs are more important than mine. All that typical stuff that you hear. So,
we all recognize
yeah,
that, I would say.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think especially when you say when it's blogs, of course, the moment you write something, you want to publish, and then you want it to be good enough, which is a different kind of way of writing a book, I would say. Because with books, I think
mhm,
one of the advices I always heard is like it's good to keep writing and do the editing later at the
yes,
moment, and at
yeah,
that you're better at. And with
mhm,
blog posts, of course, you want to, well, finish it at some point, so you want
yeah,
to edit it,
uh-huh,
well, maybe not immediately while you're writing it, but very short after that. But these are two different kind of activities, so
they are. They
that's a
are.
different kind of challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have the writing for the book is scheduled because I have a co-author, and we meet
Mm,
and we write over Zoom on a Google Doc. And so it's scheduled. And so it seems like a simple answer. I just need to schedule my blog writing.
mm,
So there's my biggest challenge right now. And even as I verbalize it to you, I say, why can't I do this? But stay
mm.
tuned. Maybe I'm going to get better. I have to get better because I love writing them and I love hitting the publish button.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of that. Yeah, I think many people recognize that. What I've noticed, well, for a book, I've a technique I've done, and I have no idea if it would translate to blog posts. But what I've done for a book was set also for me um, a kind of minimum, but also kind of maximum. Like, okay, I want to, let's say, write 500 words a day, and I would say I want to do that minimum, but once I reach it, I don't want to write more. And so typically what happens is I start writing, and in the beginning I might still have an idea, and then I'm like halfway I'm stuck because I'm like, I don't have an idea anymore, but I'm always already halfway, so I have to keep push myself to write until the 500 words.
Uh-huh.
But by the time I'm there, I have way more ideas because look, and then I stop on purpose because or maybe I just write a small comment about, okay, these are the ideas for continuing, and then it's for the next day. And because I already have the ideas, the next day, the first 100, 200 words are very easy because
Mhm.
I already have that idea. And
Yes.
very quickly, I'm again halfway. Then it's hard, but because I'm already halfway, it's easier to pushing myself.
Mhm.
What I did before that was like, I would write until I have all my ideas of today I've written out, and then I might write very long. But then restarting the next day is extremely hard because I have no ideas anymore. I used all my ideas the previous day. And that was for me an easier way to keep writing. And I'll now say 500. I have no idea how much words
Mm-hmm.
it was at the
Yeah.
time, but just having a certain momentum,
Mm-hmm.
that for me helped a lot. But that's, yeah, I don't think it will work for blogs because it's, yeah, blogs are really almost like one idea at a time or something like that.
Yeah, so if anybody has ideas, but I mean, I have lots and lots of material. That's not the problem. I have lots and lots of material. It's the sitting down and writing it when I've already spent so much time at the computer on a given day. So, but yeah, there's my biggest challenge. And I think the more I verbalize it, thank you for allowing me to do that, the more I'll recognize this is really something I need to make progress on. Somehow I need to make progress on it. I was just I like to dance, and I was dancing yesterday, and I saw this 81-year-old dancing, and I came up with an idea about leadership as it relates to putting effort into when you're exhausted and tired. And I thought this came up with this great idea. I should have come home and started writing it. So,
Hmm.
but I didn't. So, but I think it's still up there because it would have been a really good. I was going to title it "Bust a Move." Do you have that saying where you are? Bust a move. Do you know
No,
BUST?
that doesn't ring a bell for me. I
Okay.
have no idea what it means. But that's exactly why I need the article, of course.
Yeah, it means a burst of energy. You bust a move. Yeah. So, all right, you've
Let
motivated
me
me.
know when it's done.
Check
And
in
so,
with
but
me. I'm
exactly, that's a good idea. So,
putting it on my to-do list. Here it goes. Bust a move. See, it's on my to-do list right next to me now.
So you thought, so the question was two-folded. It was like, what's the biggest challenge and why is it a good thing? Is there something that is good for you to have that kind of challenge?
Yeah, it's a good thing because I now am doing workshops on personal change too. And because people have told us over the years that our fearless change not only applies to organizational change, but applies to personal change. So it's good for me to be struggling with something when I go into those workshops so that I can share my struggles so people don't think, oh, I have it all figured out. And you just need to listen to me as the big wisdom. And so I can be honest with them and say, look, here's the things I struggle with. And then they're more willing to talk about what they struggle with. And so that's why it's a good thing for me to continually have these struggles in trying to improve myself too and what I do.
Yeah, I recognize that, and I think it's indeed the more vulnerable we open up to the rest of the
Mhm.
world, the more we feel authenticated or we feel connections, and then people might indeed open up with their struggles if
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
feel the need to.
Mhm.
If they, yeah, so I recognize that. Well, we talked already about lots of change and lots of different interesting stories, and I recognize a lot of passion with you. I've seen it in the multiple projects, and so my next question is, what drives you? Do you know where that drive, where that passion is coming from?
Yeah, I went to a workshop once in Berkeley, California. And so Berkeley, California is full of a lot of people who are just out there. They're putting their hearts and souls on the line, at the university there. And it was a workshop in learning how to teach critical thinking to students. But they gave us an assignment to go to as we left and until the next morning we came back, we were supposed to think about what has made us the kind of teacher that we are. What has made us the kind of teacher that we are? And there was this place nearby that had lavender soda, homemade lavender soda. It was about a mile away. So I thought, okay, as I walk to get this lavender soda, I'm going to think about my assignment for over the night. What has made me the kind of teacher that I am? And as I'm walking, I'm starting to tear up because had some deep thoughts about how I was raised and how I was raised with this attitude like, you're fine, everything's fine, just get moving, just keep moving, you're fine, just keep moving. And so that was really good to give me the strength that I have. But the problem is, not everybody has that attitude of keep moving no matter what. Just keep moving, do something. And so while that has been both a blessing and a curse, and the way that it's kind of been a curse is I expect it in other people. And so I was about in my early 40s when I had this revelation, and it completely changed the way that I handled my students in the classroom. I recognized that they all didn't come from the same background. Well, I knew they all didn't come from the same background, but I never really put two and two together the way my drive was not their drive. And so, what drives me is the ability to keep moving, which is positive, but I have to recognize that that's not the way everybody else thinks. And so, that's um, yep, that's where what it is.
And could you give an example of how that changed your teaching?
So I remember going back into the classroom that Monday morning and just thinking about the way that I talked with students, the language that I used, to be much more of, I recognize that you have all these other things in your life. And I recognize that a lot of those other things are taking a priority. And so setting the goals differently, spreading the goals out, not on my timetable, but more allowing them to set their own timetables, which turns out to be a great life skill that I started learning as I tried this out more and more and more. At first, I went, yeah, I'm going to let them do their timetable. Oh gosh, they're going to put off everything at the last minute. But you know what?
Mhm.
That's a learning if they choose to do it that way. So that was one important thing that I changed. And again, I
And
was
what was the effect? Was that exactly as bad as you thought that people
for
were doing it on?
yeah, for some students,
Mhm,
but you have to keep reminding them along the way because you have to remember that many of the students, we have I have some older students in the class, but many of the students are very young. And so you
mhm.
have to continually remind them, okay, you're working on your own timetable, but remember that these are the kind of things you still have to do. And this is the estimated time for each one. So, in other words, it was more like guiding them than just telling them this is what what the deadlines are. So, letting them timetable their things. And yes, it was chaotic at first, and yes, some of them took advantage of that. But I would argue even the ones that put everything off to the last minute and had a lot of problem with the whole thing learned from that. They may not wanted to admit it to the teacher, but they learned from that. And isn't
Or
that
their
my
parents,
what did you say?
or their parents. I mean, like, yeah.
Or their grade, their resulting grade.
Mhm.
So I would argue that it was a better outcome. Even though at times it was frustrating for them and for me, it was a better outcome. And that all came as a result of me not putting my values on them. So
Yeah, but
that's one
because
example.
yeah, because of course you want your students to get the best grades, but maybe
Mhm.
for some of them it's like, okay, just passing is already good enough because maybe
Yes.
I'm taking care of my parents or a sibling
Mhm.
or whatever. I'm making I need to work at the same time
Mhm.
or whatever. Maybe I'm partying a lot, but I want to finish in the first in 5 years but continue partying, and so I don't care about the top grades. I don't know, I'm just inventing a couple of
Yeah.
things that for us might feel completely strange but might for them make a an important thing there. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's like you say, we don't know what's going on in other people's life, what are their values, what do they care about.
Mhm.
um that's But it's interesting because we you talk a lot about change, and this is something that you had to change for you to allow the
Mhm.
students to get more responsibility. And yeah, I do recognize so much as a parent, but also as a manager working with people, sometimes you need to let go and trust that when they say they can do it, okay, we have to, like you
Hmm.
say, guide them and remember them, like, okay, this is what is expected at some kind of point, but let them figure it out on their own and sometimes fail and then maybe hope they learn from it and the next time. Yeah.
Well, I see a blog post here. It's our work ethic isn't necessarily everybody else's work ethic.
Mm.
And that is really frustrating in the workplace. And it certainly doesn't have an easy answer that could be answered in a blog post, but it certainly seems to be something we need to recognize. And I think that's what I recognize, even though these weren't managers and et cetera, I was a professor and they were students, but that's what I was doing. I was trying to impose my work ethic on
Mhm.
them. And I don't think that works in the classroom or in the workplace. But yet
No,
it's
yeah, I
hard.
agree. Well, of course, if it again, a lot depends on the job and what is
Yeah.
expected. If
Yeah.
I go into surgery, I do hope that the doctor has a work ethic that
Mhm.
gives the results that he promises, and not like, okay, I forgot some tools inside your body, and okay, it's next time I'll do better. No, I do prefer that you work better. So there are some basic quality levels for every job, I would say, and they might be different. Um, but again, like you say, these are 17 to 20-year olds and or 25. I don't know what's
Mhm.
the full range of that, but these are very young people that might have completely different kind of life goals at that moment, or just surviving goals or whatever. So
But I
that's
think it's more, I liked your doctor story, but I was thinking it's also about process. So I was
mm,
leading a team on a 2.5 year project once. And it was clear to me, this large team, that not everybody had, although I didn't use that word at the time, but they all didn't have the same work style or work ethic as I did. But you know what?
mhm,
We all got that project done at the end, and it was dynamite. I mean, it was a dynamite project that the result was just
mm,
fabulous. But along the way, I had to learn that not everybody has the same way of working that I do. And
mm,
again, I was younger. And today when I say that, it's like, duh. But then it was a realization for me, like, well, yeah, people, it's the process of getting from A to B is different for everybody. And so that's hard.
but still at the same time the result is the same. You get there as a team, or the goal is to get there as a team.
Uh-huh.
And I think, well, when I look at both of my two oldest children are working now as leaders in the scouting, and already now at their age they know that, okay, these kind of people, you can count on them, and these, like, okay, if they promise something, maybe we need to give a backup of, or yeah, we don't need to count too much onto them. um, but yeah, it is kind of important because you're taking care of other children, other people's children. So yeah, you need to be, you want to have a safe environment to do all these kind of things. And yeah, there is a difference, and I think that team should always be in some kind of balance, and you have to feel somehow, okay, who are the people we're getting on to, and who not. And sometimes it's good to have extra people from when it's becoming tougher, that they will jump in,
Mhm.
but maybe they might not be, yeah, doing it. And I think, or at least I have the feeling, but I want to check with you. I have the feeling that some people, well, behave different at different moments. Like, for example, if there is a crisis, that's not always the same people who will jump up and work through the crisis than when things are boring and who are doing the daily
Mhm.
daily work.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
recognize that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that reminds me of my dissertation chair. I wonder if he will ever listen to this, because my dissertation chair has had a different way of working than I did. So
Mm,
I would, if I got my next assignment, I would jump on it and start thinking about it and make some drafts and get working. And he was always a procrastinator. And I don't say anything that he wouldn't say. He would call himself a procrastinator. But what was beautiful as we worked together, I realized that when I was really, really tired because I had been working in the beginning, he was just getting his groove on. And so he was a
Mm.
really good finisher. And over the years of working with him, I realized, wow. Even though at times we probably wanted to wring each other's neck, because I was like, we need to do this, and we need to get this done. You're worrying me that I'm like, and he's like, calm down, we'll get it done. So you could see how we wanted to wring each other's neck. But at the same time, it was after we got that groove on where I would start things and he would be a finisher. Oh, it was beautiful. It really
Uh,
worked out.
I really like that nuance that you bring, because yeah, it's most people are either starters or finishers. There might be people who are good at both, but it's really good to realize what you are. If you're
Mhm.
really the
Yeah.
kind of person who loves to start something, and love a person who loves to finish, and or who are you a person that wants to, yeah, that has the grit to get going while it's hard, and yeah, so that is these are the different kind of yeah, dynamics that play in a team. And so,
Mhm.
and like you say, the people who don't do it at the start might be really good finishers, like with your
Mhm.
colleagues. So that's
Mhm.
really yeah, a very nice story. Well,
Thanks.
talking about starting and finishing, what do you consider your biggest achievement, or at least the biggest achievement so far?
So I'm guessing this is professional achievement, right?
You can do it in any kind of way. I on purposely don't make a distinction, and I don't say when what kind of direction, because I like the diversity of these answers in that way. Uh,
Yeah,
but you can choose.
yeah. Um, well, every parent, including me, wants to say it says, having a child and getting them to be a contributing human being to our society and to our world is quite an achievement. And that, from a personal point of view, I know many, 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 many different people do it, but when you can accomplish that, to me, that's the biggest personal achievement. So anything else is going to fall in second to that. And
Mm,
I guess I have two that come in second. One is personal, in that I always wanted to have a home on the beach, and I planned for it, slowly but surely dripping money into an account over the many, many, many years. And finally, following a hurricane when prices were really cheap, I bought this dumpy little place on the beach, and through a lot of sweat equity, managed to fix it up and make it inhabitable. So when I sit on my porch and watch the waves with my glass of wine, I truly can't believe that I achieved that, because it was back when I was 16 or 17 when I watched a TV show of people living on the beach. And I said, I want to be that someday. And how does middle income people do that? They do it by putting nickels and dimes into their accounts and then waiting for an opportunity. So I have this little place on the beach that I bought with someone else. So I'm a co-owner, and that's another way you can achieve
mm,
your goals. So I have a co-owner, and between the two of us, we got enough money, and we got the opportunity of finding a dumpy little place and fixing it up. And so that may not sound like much, but it was something I was dreaming about since I was 16 or 17. And so that comes in second to my daughter as personal. And then professional, it has to be writing 2 books of fearless change with Linda Rising. We had a blast doing it. And the fact that, and I'll never forget the day that I opened the package and there it was. I mean, the first book. So it was a glorious experience, and it opened all sorts of doors. And so that was professionally that, and being a teacher. I guess when you get to be my age, there's a lot. So I'll just stop there.
Well, the question that I sometimes ask before asking this question is that this question is really allowing you to brag and to be proud. And
Uh-huh.
so the question I sometimes ask before is it easy for you as a person to brag? And the fact that you very quickly come up with some of these things, it gives me the impression that for you it's easy to be proud of some of the things that you achieved. Is that the correct
Well,
assumption?
I think we have to be. I
Mm,
think we have to be proud of some of the things we've accomplished. Otherwise, we're going to get consumed with all the things that we didn't accomplish or that we still want to accomplish and we're not making any progress on. I guess that goes back to that small successes pattern we have. And so I think that keeps us motivated by looking at, well, look what you've been able to do.
mm,
So, and yes, that may sound like you're bragging, but I don't talk about this on a daily basis. I talk about it to myself when I get annoyed at myself for what I haven't done, or what I
mm.
don't seem to be making progress on. You've got to tap yourself on the back and say, yeah, but look what you have done. It just, it's a big motivator. I can't say that enough, to keep you on the right track,
Right.
that you can do it.
I really like that, and I think it's if even if indeed you only say it to yourself, I think it's important to remind yourself about all the things that you achieved, and yeah, and sometimes because I've noticed for myself, for example, that it's very easy to brag about the other people. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can. I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of the Fearless Change books of both of them, and yeah, it's one of the books that I keep giving to other people. It's very easy to do that. It's like, yeah, look
Mhm.
at this is a wonderful
Thank
book.
you.
Same
Uh-huh.
thing for things that my daughter created a very small workshop that turned into a small booklet. It's very easy to yeah
Uh-huh.
to be proud of that. Much easier than some of the things I have achieved. So I think it stays important to realize that as a person that also like, wait a minute, why is it so easy to be proud of other people's things, and yeah, do we keep ourselves? And this is why I thought it's an important question to ask. And so I really like your answer. Like it's really good to keep ourselves sane as well, because that's a little bit how I translate what you just said. It
Yeah, and
keeps us
when you
happy.
tell oh, thank you. And when you tell people about what you've done, I think it can motivate them to believe that they could do it too. They have a human
Mm,
being in front of them, or they don't want to maybe do the same thing you've done, but they can do something similar. And so I think that's another reason for talking about the kinds of things you did that worked out well. And people go, huh, well, I don't want to do that exact same thing, but that gives me a motive, that gives me an idea for something I can do. So that's another reason for sharing that. Oh, you know what? I want to just share one more thing because that had happened this week. So I had this dream that there could be an award at my university for being a kind person. So, as faculty members, we're always awarded for being scholars or teachers or service. And those are all wonderful things. But when you look at what keeps the world going, it's really kindness in my mind. So, over the years, I've been working on trying to get an award funded that would be a kind heart award. And through lots of funding sources, it finally became reality. And they awarded the first year, the first person, what that was on Monday, the Kind Heart Award at UNC Asheville. And I'm just so excited about that. And so I say that because maybe other places will think about, why don't we have an award for people that are just, they're kind, they're kind, they do other things, but they are kind human beings. So you should have seen the look on that guy's face when he won it, and it'll be given every year. So
yeah, I really like that. And in Belgium, a couple of years ago, I don't know when it started. I want to, yeah, I don't know, but a couple of, well, I know at least one of the organizers. They started something that's called Be Heroes, and B as in BE Belgium Heroes. And so basically, what they ask people to do is to nominate people who are, yeah, doing something good for the rest of the humankind, I would say,
mhm.
typically in Belgium. And so everybody can nominate people, and then once a year they I don't know how it works. They have a jury or some other people who select. So all of these stories, when people accept it, are published on the website, so you can read all of these
Uh-huh.
nominations. Um,
Yeah.
but then they even select a couple of them, and they even can go to visit the Belgian Queen, or King. I'm sorry.
Ooh.
um, so that they get recognized for some, and that's it's a similar kind of idea. Let's celebrate the people who are kind to the people around us, to who are the heroes of our society. So yeah, I really like that idea, and I had no idea how it started.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's already going on for a couple of years, and I'm really big fan. I know that the first year I nominated a lot of people because I thought that this is so nice. And I think, yeah, I think it's the fourth or the fifth year that they're doing it, to really, yeah, make
Mhm.
sure that we make publicity for people who are doing something kind for others around them. That's
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think people could do it in their organizations. So, why not?
So,
Why not? But, it doesn't have to because when you think about how could I win one in my big community or in my big state or in my big country, but in my organization, there's so many people that just go unnoticed.
mhm.
So, just something to put out there as an idea. People think about that for their organizations.
Yeah,
An award of kindness. Yeah.
I really like that. I really like that. And so that's indeed an extra nice achievement that
Oh,
you
it's
triggered, I would say, at
It's
least.
fresh on my mind because the first awardee was this week, and so I was just so happy. I took flowers to hand to the person, and it was when he got it, you could hear people in the audience going, "Oh!" You heard all that in the background, so it was really
So
nice.
it's really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's
Mhm.
move to that next question. What I would like to know is, do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Yeah, I think a personal agility tip is something that I mentioned before is um, don't beat yourself up when there's the F word, the fail, but don't do as well as you thought. I think agility is all about looking at what went wrong and noticing it, recognizing it, getting upset and eating some chocolate cake if you need to, and then move on. I know that sounds easy, but it's a tip that has really kept me rocking and rolling over the years. And it's a tip that I really always said, but didn't follow until the last 5 years or so. As I guess with age comes wisdom, and you
Mhm.
realize a lot of these things that I thought were huge failures were just things that I could stop and go, And again, my big thing is, okay, I'm going to eat some chocolate cake, and then I'm going to move on. And that chocolate cake is a metaphor for do something to make yourself feel better, and then move on.
And then
Um,
move on. I really
it's
like
a
that.
little
It's
thing, but it really makes a difference.
But I also like that you I think you mentioned already two or three times that sometimes you knew some of these things and it was still hard to grasp on.
Yeah.
And I really like, because, well, I see you and Linda really as the two people who I teach me a lot about not being afraid to change. And then here you are saying, well, I did know it was better, but still it was hard, or I didn't believe it. And I think it's so important for people to know it's not because we know it that it makes it easier to do that change. I
Mhm.
think that's, and it's not because you wrote a book about it that then you're
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden the person that it makes it, yeah, that change is so much easier for you. I think I would maybe I dare to say, but I want to do it more as a question: is the fact that sometimes it's hard for you to make that change also a reason to go write a book about it, to teach yourself? Was that also part of that whole journey for you?
I think no, I think our journey started with the idea that we can help organizations introduce patterns into their organizations. Does that make sense? That was how we started the book. And
Mm,
then it became by just our reviewers saying, this is about bringing anything new into an organization, not just
mm,
patterns. And then over the years, people have said, those things are a lot about personal change too. So that is in the last 5 to 7 years, that's where I've been with looking at how these patterns apply to personal change. So it's been helping me look at my own personal life more strategically and that I have in the past. And I'll tell
And
you
that
that
was not the plan when you started with the
no,
book. Let's
no. And it's just like that was not the plan when you're 17 years old. See, this goes back to the
exactly.
conversation we had. You don't have to make a strategic plan. Lynn and I just started writing, and we didn't even know each other that well. We just started writing, and so we
Oh,
met,
I didn't know that you didn't know each other that
no,
well when
we
you
met at a
started writing.
conference. And we started talking about change, and people were listening to us, and they said, "You two should write a book," and the rest is history, you know. So,
Yeah, so that's but yeah, I think that's it makes the whole story even more richer, I would say, about that change, about indeed that even that Fearless Change book had
mhm,
a change pattern in its own. Like, okay,
yep,
it went and won and it moved much more into, and indeed, if I look back at when I started reading the book, for me it was indeed the first book. It was indeed about, okay, how can I bring change to other people?
mhm,
But yeah, things that are there, like yeah, asking for help and other kind of things, there are a lot of patterns that is actually a lot about ourselves and things
mhm.
there. So yeah,
Yes.
but just like you didn't think about that when you started writing it, I didn't think about it when I started reading it, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, and it brings that, yeah, it's one of the books that is well, the first book is one that I took with me for a very long time to almost every client, because it so much helped me more
Oh,
than the clients. It's, I think it's and yeah, it's one of the books that, yeah, like I said, I might teach people or might show people a little bit, but I kept my copy because I was so afraid of losing
mhm.
it.
Oh, thank you. I know. I think we quoted you on our website. You allowed us to quote you on the website.
Mm.
So thank you so much.
Well, the thank is really from my side, because I'm so happy with that book and with the follow up. I have to say I don't read the follow up as much as I read the first one,
Mhm.
but I was still happy reading it. So it's I think it's, yeah, of course they're in a different part of life and different parts of things,
Well, you
but I was really happy.
excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you may be one of those persons that want to look at the app. We now have a Fearless Change app,
Mm.
and so you could have the patterns on your. And we also have some new cards on our website that you can download. New Fearless Change.
Well, I think it's originally I learned the cards from Deborah. I think that she created
Yeah.
a version or something like that,
Oh,
and
I
then
know. Fearless
uh,
Journey. Yep. Yep. Well, we have some new ones, newly designed, and you can download them. So yeah, you don't have to carry the whole book, but those are just summaries, of course.
exactly. But yeah, for me, if I look at the way how I used the book in the, well, not the first years, but after a couple of years, was really like flipping through the book and randomly think, oh, oh, yeah, how could this pattern be
Mhm.
applicable here? And with cards, that's actually a lot faster to
Yeah.
flicker through the cards
Yeah.
and think so. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's there is
Or an
definitely
app
that.
on your phone. Yeah.
Exactly, and I think, yeah, that's these are the kind of things that are interesting to have that
Well,
kind.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, like I said, I'm a big fan of all these resources that you and Linda put out in the world. Um, let's move on to the next
Mhm.
question about what have you learned about remote working? And you already said that you're writing these
Mhm.
days in a remote way.
Mhm.
Is that something you did, like, for example, all the time? Did you write with Linda also in remote work originally, or how did that work out?
No, because we started writing in 1999, 2000. And so there
Hmm.
was no Google Drive back then that were, and things like that. And there certainly wasn't any easy telecommunication software. Skype was one of the first ones we used. I don't remember what year. So we were more working, now don't laugh, by sending files back forth to each other through email. And it's amazing, during that process, we only had one versioning issue, which, one of us got a different version, but that's what we did. And it was, you own the file now, I own the file now. So now people, of course, can write in real time together. But we would also, and goes to the question of what did you learn about remote working? We also spend time a couple times a year meeting somewhere in person. And it was a different kind of getting everything together and pulling things together in different conversations. In fact, I remember this one particular time we met in a hotel somewhere between where she was in Arizona and I was in North Carolina. And we put a sign on the door, "Do not disturb." And we were just in there constantly working, constantly working. And we says, "What are these people are wondering? Why don't we can't we ever get in there to clean the room?" But because and it was a good example of working in person is a completely different experience than working remotely.
Mm.
So what I've learned about working remotely, it's great because when I hit leave or
Oops. En ik forgot te zeggen, ja.
there.
And now you're back.
Okay.
So you
So
were talking about
yeah,
the working remotely is differently than working in person, and that you could click the leave button and then you
yeah,
left.
yeah, and you left. So that's nice. What I miss and what I worry about, I was just on another podcast and I was talking about this. What I worry about is these younger folks who are used to working entirely online and they don't and not as used to those hallway conversations with people
Mm.
and time over sipping a cup of coffee or tea and discussing things. I think that my career became what it did because I've had all those informal conversations with people in person that don't work as well online.
Mm.
So the two things I've learned about working remotely is it's great because it can shut me down. I'm like, leave, okay, I get a break. But the other thing is I worried about the people who are doing it all the time and have never experienced being in a workplace for 40 plus hours a week. It's just a different experience in idea generation and making things happen. And so, yeah, like anything, it is both there's positive and negative consequences to everything. And there you go.
Yeah, I really like that. The balance and finding ways. And I think it's for me. I also see a big difference in generations. Like
Mhm.
my second son, for example, now he's getting ready for exams, so he's been studying at home. And while I was sometimes would go to a library or to another place I could study with friends,
Mhm.
he's
Mhm.
studying at home, but he has his computer there with a Zoom call or a team calls or something, and there's like always like 3 4 friends studying at the same time.
Oh,
they're
that's
all
good.
doing something they're all doing something different, but
Uh-huh.
they're all you can just see them working
Uh-huh.
and doing it, and it's like, yeah, it's like they can just so they're all in silence. It's not like they're constantly talking to each other, but it's like, oh, you can actually do that and have like some, I don't know, for him it gives him some kind of peace on working. And yeah, and then it's also like, okay, I'll take a break now, maybe other people take a break, and so that
Mhm.
it kind of inspires people.
Mhm.
So that's a completely different generation than when I grew up with these kind of tools. Like
Mhm.
you said, in
Exactly.
the early
Yeah.
2000s, was like there was almost nothing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And of course, there's the other problem of you're always on, because they can always catch you over Zoom. So there's that problem, but everybody knows about that. So, but I think that's cool that your son found this hybrid way to keep in touch with people and work with people. Because especially, I remember getting my master's at the University of Colorado. There were some classes that I was like, "What?" when I left the class, and we just get together in our little round tables and just try to figure it out. So that
mhm.
sounds like what your son is doing with a screen.
Well, in
Cool.
this case, he's doing it with friends who are studying something completely different. So they're not collaborating there. It's
Oh,
actually all on their own. But yeah,
ah,
I know that he has done something similar in the past, indeed,
huh,
with people in the classrooms. But
good.
today, I think it was mostly from people who are in the scouting group. So they have not. They're
Uh-huh.
all doing something completely different. but it's a way to kind of stimulate each other. Like, yeah, okay, let's study together, and
Mhm.
then yeah, I don't know, on Friday or on Saturday they might go out dancing while we're not in the exams itself already,
Mhm.
but somehow they keep in touch. So
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
is, but it's a completely different technology. And you talked about, yeah, the when you say, yeah, disconnecting and things like that. Um, is there anything about remote work that you say, because that world is so different than it was like 20 years ago? Uh, is there any tip about that? Is there anything that you've learned along the years that you say, okay, this is so important for remote work that I want to share this with people?
Well, I think that we need to think about our remote work outside of our own comfort zone. So this allows me to work with people who are in many different countries and many different cultures. And so I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, I really like that. I want to move to that next question about
Mhm.
what's a book that you read that you want to talk about.
Yeah, my favorite book in the whole world is A Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander. I actually have
I
it.
think that's the
Yeah,
book that you,
that's the book.
yeah,
Yep, right
exactly.
there. Timeless Way of
And
Building.
I need to look it up. It's somewhere over there with me as well. I really, it's, I haven't really, this is why I don't know exactly where it is because I haven't looked at it recently, but yeah. So why should people read that book?
So I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. I read it because I was working on my dissertation, and it seemed to be something appropriate. So here I am picking up this book. Okay, but it was also a time when I was going through some big changes in my personal life, and I'd also bought a house that was, it seems to be a common theme with me. I bought a house that was kind of a bit of a dump and needed to be fixed up. That's not the one at the beach. This was a different one. And so I was had all these plans for trying to get this place looking nice for my daughter and me. And I just started a new job and at the university, and all these a variety of different things were changing. And so I picked up A Timeless Way of Building and thought it was about building architecture. And indeed, at the very root of it, it is. But really, what it is about building a life. So it's about architecture. It's about building a pattern language, which is why I read it because of my dissertation. But as I continued to read it, I realized it's about building a life. And I've
Mhm.
reread the book. It's all marked up, and it's just full of beautiful things to teach you how to calm down and let things happen in your life and just build a life. And that's why I love the book. And anytime I'm getting a little off kilter, I pick it up and look at some of my things that I've underlined and notes in the margins, and it reminds me, yeah, just keep on trucking. It just building a life.
Exactly, and yeah, yeah, I think it's yeah, a pretty old book because it's but it's. I do remember when I learned about it. It probably was already an old book at that time, but it had yeah. I noticed so many people that it influenced. So at that time, when I started to learn about that book and I started to talk to people, like yeah, most people I talked about it at that time, and I'm now talking the early 2000s, like almost everybody had read it already. It was like, oh, seems like I'm late to the party. And like you say, it's patterns all the way for a lot of different kind of things. And yeah, I was so amazed that patterns, well, actually existed um, outside software. Yeah, and it's really about thinking in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, like you say about life, actually. That's
Mhm.
yeah, it's
And what a great writing. Think about that. It's a book that was written about building architecture, physical buildings. And then it really evolved into how to build a pattern language, something completely different. And then I'm telling you, and other people are talking about it, how it's really about building a life. And yet it's all in the same book. It depends on
mhm.
how you read it as you read it. And that to me is an extremely talented writer.
I really like that. Yeah, it's yeah, I really like the book. I really like. Thank you for making such publicity for that book, and yeah, for I think it's really an interesting book. If people are newer to the agile world, I would say they might not have learned about that book, but I would still advise them to read
Mhm.
it um, for multiple reasons. But yeah, I think you already made that
Uh,
kind of publication there.
so many agile principles in that book, and they really are principles, just things that you go, okay, I know this, and I'm not doing it, so definitely agile principles spread throughout, even though he didn't use that word because the book was written in what, the 70s, 1970s or
Mhm.
something like that.
But like you say, I think many, well, agile principles, many agilists that I know at least have read the book and were
Good.
um, or at least I would say a big fan of the book. And I think that's probably, I have no idea how many of the people who wrote the manifesto have read the book, but a
Hmm.
few of them that I already spoke at conferences or other places, I know that they've read it. So I assume that, well, it's an assumption that maybe more had read it because it was had a huge influence on the pattern community, where
Hmm.
again some of the earliest agilists came from, in a way, I would say, or met
This
each other. Let's put it that way.
and this could be a good idea for a workshop at a conference. Something
Right.
about a timeless way of building, pulling this book out and making it a basis for, I don't know, a conference workshop or something.
Hmm.
Thought, hmm, hmm,
Yeah, that's yeah. Again, lots of ideas and
hmm,
lots of
yeah,
ideas for writing and for other kind of
yeah.
things. So that's well. With all the great answers and the great stories, I'm looking forward to this one with many people, but especially with you as well. Like, what question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
I would say, a good question would be to maybe to ask of everybody, what do you like most about yourself?
Mhm.
Um, and again, that can be hard to answer because people don't want to brag. But I would say that what I like most about myself is that I look for fun in everything. It's like, how can
Mm.
I make this fun? Unless I'm just beastly tired and I just want to go, how can I get through this so I can go to bed? But I'm always looking for a way to make things fun. And I've met people throughout the years who don't understand that concept. That doesn't mean I want to be silly. I'm still very professional, but you can be very professional and still have fun. And
Mm.
so I, I just think that's something I'm just happy that I can do. I just look, how can I make this fun, even if though I don't want to do it? So yeah,
I
ah,
yeah, I really like that, and I think I recognize it when the Fearless Change online conference that we had, that you organized or
mhm.
co-organized some years ago that I joined. I still remember, even in the pre-talks and in everything, it was just such a happy experience.
Yeah, it was
Um, and
fun.
and especially at that time where people were still thinking like, okay, we want to do something online, but how do we bring patterns in an online way, and how could we
Mhm.
bring that in with storytelling and everything? And yeah, it was fun because people brought their own stories, and yeah, it was for, well, I think well, some of the people who were there and other speakers, I know either online or I've met them, but I didn't expect at that moment to have so much fun before. With the preparation, it was already fun, so I was not so surprised, but
Uh-huh.
still, I so recognize what you say, like, okay, everything should be fun. And I can imagine that there still are moments or still are things that are maybe less fun, but somehow you find a way to still enjoy it, or at least give me the feeling that that it's enjoyable to work together. Also here this morning, or this morning, when you for you morning, for me more later in the evening, when we connected about preparing for this was like, okay, I felt the joy again to connect with you.
Oh,
So
good, good,
yeah, it's
yay. As I did with you. Thank you. Thank you
well,
so
that's the feeling I have. So I'm not surprised about, okay, how could you make things fun? And could you give examples? Are there things that you specifically do to make things more fun?
Yeah, sometimes I have to travel to go give presentations, and traveling
Mhm.
is hard today. I don't need to tell you that,
Right.
getting on planes being late, making connections, um, hoping your luggage arrives, packing, um, and all these many, many, many things. And so I start to get very grumpy as I'm getting ready to travel. And I have to always tell myself, how can I make this, the traveling part, fun? That not actually being there or meeting people or doing the presentation, but the actual grossness of the traveling part. And I have to keep asking myself that along the way, going through security, sitting down and waiting for your flight. Your flight is late. What can you do to make it fun? And to tell you the truth, that sounds like it can be really hard, if not impossible. So there's different levels of fun, right? There's fun where you're just giggling and laughing, and it's just, or there's just fun like I'm going to go get a cup of a latte, and this time because my plane is 2 hours late, I'm going to stick some hazelnut in it. All right, now that may sound silly, but it's fun
Mhm.
to drink a latte with hazelnut, which I don't normally put any sugar in it. So I just try to look for ways to improve my attitude and make it fun. So I have to do that when I travel constantly because it's so darn hard. So darn hard. So there's an example. And you talked
Yeah,
about
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
and you talked about the campfire we did the fair. We do that every year, and we haven't set the
Mhm.
date for this year, but I think it's going to be sometime in late October, early November. So, but again, it'll be on our website. Yes, people telling stories in a virtual campfire, and Linda came up with the idea of calling it a campfire. I thought that was brilliant. So it's fun,
Yeah,
you know.
it's but and that's exactly the feeling I had. Like, okay, sharing stories,
Mhm.
and that was, yeah, it's sharing, yeah, stories, but what how where we can learn something, where we
Mhm.
can link it to patterns. And yeah, well, for most of us, we learn from stories, or storytelling is so an
Uh-huh.
important part of sharing
Yeah.
experiences. Um, and indeed, a virtual campfire, when I first heard about it, was like, how are you going to do that? But it's, and again, it's about daring something like that. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you realize that, okay, there might not be an actual fire with
Mhm.
me at that moment, but it really felt the way a campfire felt. And actually, if I don't know when the first time, but if I hear October, that's in Belgium not the time of the year to be sitting outside around the campfire, but it definitely was. Well, it was in my comfortable home again, sharing these things. That was, it felt maybe even better than a campfire at that time of the year. So
Yeah, and I
that's
loved all
definitely
those people that put a campfire behind them, like, they got on a virtual
exactly.
screen, they put a campfire. Well, those are people that knew how to have fun, they just went I hadn't
Mhm.
thought about that, to put a campfire, and I'm always afraid of my screen being pixelated or something, so those virtual backgrounds worry me when I'm doing a presentation, but these other people did that, and they had these fires behind them, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, now that's fun."
Mhm. That
So,
was fun.
so
That was
fun,
fun
yeah.
to have that in different kind of way. Well, thanks for sharing that and bringing these stories. And for, I want to move to that last question about who do you think I should also talk to, and who do you think should bring some of their stories? And I think you had a couple of people in mind.
Yeah, I had I think there were 3 or 4 names,
I had
and
four. You gave me four names, so let's.
yeah,
Who do you want to talk about?
um, Okay, I don't remember all the names that I gave you. I
Okay,
do.
maybe let's do it differently. I will.
Okay.
If you're ready for an experiment, let's bring on the people, and then you
Oh
talk
yeah. So that
briefly
was
about.
the first. That was the first person I was going to think about. I don't- she was at. She spoke at our campfire last year, and she's a
Mhm,
ball of energy. Stephanie Brazil. And I was just really impressed with her. And she stayed the whole time. In fact, the campfire ran late because, I mean, ran over. We kept the campfire stories right on time, regimented on
mhm.
time, so that because everybody had rough schedules. But many people stayed until the campfire was over to just chit chat. And she was one of them. So um, I'm impressed with her work. She's an agile person. She's very technical, and I don't know exactly, that was a year ago. And so I don't know what she's up to this year, but somehow she came to my mind first when you asked me this, probably 4 months ago or so.
So that's indeed. So that's the first person. Let's bring on the second person you thought about. I hope I
Yeah,
have the pictures correct. So.
yes. Yeah. So I met Tezi. I'm gonna mess up her first name. I met her at Europlop in July, and she sat next to me at breakfast and talk about fun. And yet and we also played the Fearless Journey game that you mentioned, Deb put
Mhm,
together. And we played that at Europlop, and she was just quite a dynamic contributor. She's also one of the chairs of Europlop this year, the program chair, something like that. So
mhm.
she's very interesting. So that's why I recommended her.
Thanks for bringing her
I'm
up.
sorry, I
So
can't remember the pronunciation on her first name, so I'm just not gonna try to say it.
yeah, I haven't met her. Yeah, I'm not going to try. Let's
Okay,
bring her on, and then she can pronounce her own name.
okay, good,
I always find it dangerous
good,
to mention
good.
names.
Yeah,
I might have an idea because it looks kind of similar to a person I've worked with, but too too not similar to not even
mhm,
try. Let's
yeah.
bring on the third person that you talked about. Who is this?
Oh, yeah. So, she is the chair, one of the chairs of PLOP this year. And, so I'm working with her, and I just love working with her. And, she has a great sense of humor, but she's really extremely sharp. So that's why I recommended her for this too. I don't know that
Okay.
any of these people are available, but
Well, sometimes, like you say, it took us a couple of months to get this call organized, but that's
yeah.
fine. I have the time. I'm already happy that we can have this conversation.
Uh-huh.
So but I just need to make sure that I invite enough people to allow
Mhm.
for this to take some more time. So thank you for inviting. I think Indu is her name,
Oh,
if
yes.
I'm correctly.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant about saying people's names because I'm like, well, I haven't really asked them to,
Right.
but yeah, her
But
name's
that's fine as well. There was, I think I have 600 people on my list.
oh.
I've invited like I think 300 by now, and there is I think about 10 something like that that have rejected that says no, I prefer not to do, and that's totally
Mhm.
fine. I
Uh-huh.
think it's just an invitation, and of course I'm sad when people say no, but again it's an invitation, and people
Mhm.
make
Mhm.
the decision themselves.
Yeah.
It's again a little bit like you said earlier on. It's a kind of say, oh, I thought about you, and I thought about you for this kind of
Mhm.
initiative,
Yeah.
and they might decline happily or unhappily for
Mhm.
whatever kind of reasons. I don't need to know the reasons why people decline. That still is a possibility. And there
Yeah.
was one fourth person that you talked about or that you invited. So
Yeah.
let's bring her on.
And I actually did. That's Cindy Ireland, and I did ask her, and she didn't respond to me. Thoroughly impressed with her because she is an IT manager who has been an IT manager most of her life, and just listening to her talk about her philosophy of management will take your breath away.
Mm.
So it would be great to get her. She's in Asheville, North Carolina. She's a personal friend of mine. But I don't, I can reach out to her again.
But I will be, well, once this episode is aired, I
Mhm.
will tag everyone on LinkedIn because you gave me all their profiles,
Okay.
and so at that moment I will reach out to them and ask if they're interested in joining or not, and
Okay.
that is something that we can see then at that moment. And yeah, if needed, I might still ask you for an introduction, but we can deal with that
Okay.
at that
Okay.
moment.
Okay.
Um, well, I really would like to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's been almost a wonderful 2 hours, a little bit less than that. It's been a wonderful time. Yeah,
I
I can only
totally
be
agree.
very.
I mean, it was the funny story is this morning I woke up with no electricity. So you
Mhm.
remember that I emailed you and I said, I might not make it today. And then after I emailed you, I was so disappointed. I was like, oh, because I won't get to see you. So I'm glad we made it happen. My electricity came on and thank you so much.
Well,
Really,
I'm glad mostly that the whatever happened with the electricity was just a minor thing. You
mhm.
just shared indeed that there was a risk of a tornado near another close friend of ours, so that didn't
Yeah,
happen. I'm really happy to hear that as well, because it's like, yeah, these days nature is kind of unpredictable what is happening. So yeah, when I heard this morning about the lack of electricity, I was worried that there was a bit something bad,
yeah,
and it's never clear. Yeah, we think that, well, at least when I grew up, I assumed that there would always be electricity all the time.
yeah,
And I think these years we see that that it's kind of sometimes our grid is not as stable as we think it is or as
exactly.
it used to be, and so that is kind of scary in a way, and or at least this morning I got scared is maybe the wrong word, but yeah, I was kind of like, oh, what's going on? I was relieved when I realized, okay, you send an email, so it means you're okay.
Yeah,
But still, I was like, yeah, I was, yeah, I was sad if we could not have had our conversation. So I was so happy that a couple of hours later you send me like, no, it's okay, everything came back to normal. So yeah,
yeah, it was
I'm
a
really happy.
storm. It was a storm during the night, and I sent the email from my phone, and after I, sent the email, I contacted my neighbor who has a gas range, and I said, "Hey, we can figure out how to light that range, can't we, and make some fire so we can have some coffee?" And so I had a delightful time sitting down there and talking to her for 30 minutes to start my day rather than with email. And it was delightful sitting on her porch with the two of us sitting there figuring out how to light
Mhm.
her stove without electricity. And we made it happen and we had our coffee and a great conversation. So it was fun.
Anyway, again, you make fun of everything, or you make a fun time of everything,
Yeah, yeah,
of a bad
fun.
situation.
Yeah,
And indeed, sometimes, like you said earlier on, we're so much into our computers and into our online world, and then having no electricity getting us out of it, we could still be on our phones, but still,
yeah,
it might be a sign of nature to say, you know what, let's talk to people and
yeah.
let's
Thank
have
you for
some
that big
coffee.
storm. Well, and thank
Well,
you again. I really appreciate it.
it's the pleasure was all mine. So yeah, have a fantastic rest of the day. I
You,
hope you can
you too.
enjoy everything. See
Okay.
you.
Thank you for watching
Bye.
Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.